My name is Richard Devine. I am a sound designer. I'm based from Atlanta. Um, I actually live up in Woodstock, but I always tell everybody I'm from Atlanta. And I do work. It's kind of hard to explain all the different things I'm involved with, but I do work in games as well as audio applications, audio hardware, software environments that anything from a television set to a Android app to a iPhone app to the sound of an electric car. I work with several car manufacturers designing sounds for them from the ground up. But I also do all kinds. Currently, I'm working right now with Google designing sounds for their VR virtual reality platform called Daydream. So my duties right now are quite a few things. It's designing VR environments for all like the home pages, anywhere that you're exploring in the VR world. I have to design the ambisonic audio environments as well as UI sounds and any sort of like gesture grabbing objects, pulling objects, anything using the HTC Vive controllers, and it's to stuff like that. I kind of do stuff all over the place. I also make sound libraries. I also program synthesis for synthesizer companies like Roland, Korg. I'm leaving all kinds of stuff, but it's pretty fairly in depth. So what I was going to talk about today is just some of the tools that I use as a sound designer, and then play you guys some audio clips and some things, and then show you also some. This is kind of weird. Show you guys some of the microphones and stuff I'm using, and then some of the software. As being a sound designer, some of this might come in handy as you're working on games or your audio projects, whether you're doing TV, film stuff, because I've done a lot of work in commercial advertising, doing TV spots and all kinds of stuff for about 14, 15 years. But my beginnings into sound was through synthesizers. I'm a musician, electronic musician first, so I've been releasing records for 24 years now. Signed with record labels like Warp, Sublight, Asphodel, Schematic Records, which was a record label that was run by me and two other friends from Miami. So I've been putting out music, touring, and living the just sort of the electronic artist lifestyle, touring, playing festivals, and doing all kinds of things in that world. And then about, I'd say 1999, I got my first call to work as a sound designer. I didn't even know what being a sound designer meant. A software company in Germany called Native Instruments called my house. And it was a German guy, didn't know who he was. And at the time I was using a version of their software cracked on my computer. I thought that they had busted me and were like, "We've got him now. He's been using our stuff. He's going to jail," So I was like completely paranoid. And my girlfriend's like, "That's not why they're calling you." And I was just like, "Just call him back." And I was just like freaking out. And then I finally called him back, I was like, I'm sorry. I downloaded Generator. It's so cool. They were super cool. They were like, no, we actually want to work with you. We're really big fans of your music. We bought your album, and we would love to know some of your techniques and some of the things that you're doing to achieve some of these sounds. And I was just like, woo, all right, cool. I'm not going to jail. But they were really cool. They wouldn't have cared. They told me they wouldn't have cared if I was using their stuff. They're a super cool company. But the beginnings sort of started there. I was always just making music, and that's all really I knew how to do, is just make records and make weird sounds that sort of worked in bigger context within a music composition for my own stuff that I was releasing. So when they approached me, they were like, "Hey, have you ever made sounds for a product or for an instrument?" And I told them, "No, I've never done that." And I said, "That's fine. We want to try you out anyway." So I worked initially on some of the first software plugins they released: Battery, Percussion Sampler plugin, Contact, I did some of the first expansion libraries that they released. FM7, which I don't know, some of you guys don't have FM synthesizer. Now it's at FM8, which I've also worked on. It's a pretty cool sound. Should record that. So I've been working with them. I worked, and I still work with them even till today, up until their current release, Complete 11, which is a complete package of all their instruments and sample libraries. And their new synthesizer called Form, which I also did the audio demos and presets and patch programming on. So it's been a long relationship, but that kind of opened the door, so to speak, because I got in it at a time when sort of computer synthesis was just taking off. So right at 1999, going into 2000, that's like when the first wave of like DSP applications really started to, people were like, oh, you can do some serious shit in the computer now. It was kind of, before that, it was like SoundForge. There were very minimal tools for audio editing, but there wasn't really a whole lot as far as instruments and like really, really creative like sound design stuff. It was just like very crude audio editing capability. So it was, I kind of was like at a weird, kind of riding a wave in a way, kind of jumping on. So when I started designing sounds for them, my name would pop up in everyone's computer, which in my head, I wasn't even thinking about that at the time. I didn't realize they were going to sell so many X amount of this software, that software, and that, these post-production houses and people doing trailers and video games were all using their software, where they just load up my presets. I was like, oh, this preset's really fucked up by this guy, Richard Devine. I love this one. And, so it was, I never thought that was a way of, getting into people's, into their speakers, into their studios, into their workspaces to kind of get recognized. But that's kind of how it started. So that kind of led into this, it kind of snowballed from there. I started working with several advertising agencies, doing TV, film stuff, and then getting into working on bigger projects with the clients got bigger and bigger. Like started working with companies like Barnes & Noble. They asked me to work on, I designed all the sounds for the Nook tablets, like all the UI, like page turning sounds and like the Nook logo when you open a Nook tablet. And then, so it started to get into things where the sound was being integrated into these things outside of just a TV commercial or a 30-second spot, a 15-second spot, or a trailer or something, which sort of more or less used sound in the same way. You had to really kind of tell a short story with a very short amount of time, have maximum impact. Now, I was working on projects where I had even less to work with, where I'm working with like a device that has one speaker that plays in mono, that's frequency response is like that gives you about that much room to play with. You're like, you don't have the, the flexibility and the luxury of having a subwoofer, and you have to make the sounds really articulate something through the air, through the ambience, through, kind of like the clatter of everyday life. And so you're struggling to make these very short, tiny sounds that have to tell people a whole lot of information, which is very challenging. But that's what my job became, was getting thrown into a lot of these different situations. And so I don't know how to explain. I've gotten training in sort of weird areas of sound design, and I've kind of gotten this weird niche, fallen into this weird niche where a company is like, hey, we want to do this really weird thing, and we don't know how to do it, And so they would call me. Like I remember getting a call one day from a company who was doing a Campbell's soup ad, and they wanted to morph the sound of the chef with the sound of his voice with seagulls and the ocean water and a boat horn. You guys might have seen this commercial, but it was on TV. It was kind of silly. And everyone at their house, their production house, couldn't figure it out. And they had a Kima system there, but no one knew how to use it. So one of the guys there was like, oh, I know the sound designer that has one of these. He knows how to use this, and he'll probably know how to do this. So they called me to do that for them, like do all the voice morphing and stuff on this system, and because no one could do it. But it's such a weird, I'm that guy. They'll call, we need to do some really weird shit, and no one could figure out how to do that weird shit, so we're gonna hire you to do that weird shit for us, so hopefully you can do it. And so that's kind of like my job in a nutshell. And but kind of going back, when I first started, I was talking about the first beginnings. This is putting out records. This is kind of the label that I was affiliated with. Released my first album was Warp. We later went on to compilation remixes, and like I said, working in the record industry and stuff is, if you can do it, I think it's really awesome training to go on tour and to deal with. It really, really is. I wouldn't throw away any of that experience for anything. I think it really kind of, had not been for any of that, doing any of that, I don't think I'd be where I am today. So, and coming from that, I kind of came up from a sort of a different background musically. It was, I did about 10 years of classical training, piano, and then got into playing bass, other instruments, drums, and then it was, I'd say early on, probably 7th or 8th grade, I started to get into really, really eccentric electronic music. I know Chad was talking about Skinny Puppy in his lecture. I was really into Skinny Puppy, SPK, these groups like Coil, very like sort of strange, sort of stuff that kind of caught my ear, that had like, at the time I didn't realize, it had very like sound design elements in it. Some of it was almost non-musical. They weren't using like conventional instruments that you would think. They were using very crude samplers and like sheets of metal and, sort of like found objects, and to make these music compositions I felt were really striking. They weren't using traditional drum sets and bass sounds and stuff. It sort of it kind of made me really think about the concept of, you don't necessarily have to use the same thing that everybody's using to make music. You can use a trash can conveyor belt machine as your drum machine, or it really kind of changed my perspective on what sonically you could do. And these are a couple composers that, if you haven't checked them out, I would highly recommend checking them out. They were some of the composers, at least for me, that kind of were like the turning point. That really kind of like were, like I was saying, like just like kind of pull the carpet out from me. And it's like, oh, wait a minute, you can actually do something like this, and it'd be really cool. Morton Subotnick was one. I put two of my favorite records is The Wild Bull and Silver Apples, which were actually composed entirely on what was called the Buchla modular system, which you can see this guy right here. And what was so striking about these records, I mean, you could download these or check them out on YouTube. There's tons of clips of it. Is with Don Buchla's designs, this particular instrument wasn't designed like a 12-tone keyboard. All of Don's instruments were super far forward thinking. I mean, he was pretty much like an acid tripper. Was just like, I want to make something where people can make music far outside conventional, 12-tone scale music. So he designed these really cool instruments that had alternate controllers with analog oscillators, sets of filters and VCAs, and low pass gates, and it's very, very big, complex systems, but generated very organic results that didn't sound very linear, because all the music I'd been listening to prior to that point was very linear based, very like within a grid. It was either programmed on a drum machine or a hardware sequencer, or in some sort of computer sequencer that was still set to some sort of grid, where these things were sort of like free running, and you could offset your patterns to be outside of a grid or not on a grid at all. So things sounded very organic and sort of free form. So right at the beginning, that really, really struck me. These two records kind of just were like, I was like, whoa, okay, this is really different. This is it's almost like watercolor painting. Like you could like make the colors mesh together. They could blend, and you could get these splotches of colors that like are darker and lighter. It was very much like working with sound like that. That's kind of what the first beginnings. I became very infatuated with this sort of format, and I started to research a bit more. There's some other composers, Hugh Kane, Todd Dockstader, who's primarily worked in tape, but they also worked with analog oscillators and modular-based systems. So I began my research into this because I became fascinated and not realizing this was kind of like the early beginnings of sound design for me, using analog synthesizers. And the first synth that I actually got was an ARP 2600. I'm going to fast forward here. These are just a couple pictures of some of the systems I have at my studio, or this is an old picture of some older gear. And this is an actual picture of an ARP 2600, the one that I own actually. It's on my kitchen table there. I think I've got it running into Looks like an older version of Max MSP. But so this synth I got at a pawn shop here in Georgia. I can't remember how many years ago it was. I was 16 or 17 years old when I got it. And I would take it in my garage, and I would just trip acid and play this thing loud. It had speakers, and I would just trip balls and be like, oh my God, this is amazing, for hours. My parents, my mom would be like, what the hell is he doing out there? Like making all this racket and like, but I basically lost my mind in this thing. But I mean, it's funny, and the reason why I bought it, I remember because I was reading an issue of Keyboard Magazine, and there was a little blurb about the 2600, and Ben Burt, who's one of my heroes as far as like sound designers go. When I read a little caption said, yeah, Ben Burt used the ARP 2600 to make the sounds of R2D2, and I was like, I have to find this synthesizer. The synthesizer will be mine. So yeah, I got this, finally was able to find one at a pawn shop, and it was a little beat up. It needed some work. But what was really excellent about the ARP is the structure, the way that it basically taught me all the basic building blocks of sound shaping and sound design. Like had a white pink noise generator, had a ring modulator, had a spring reverb, an 11-inch spring reverb coil tank. So it also had 3 oscillators. It's got a filter. Actually, let me do this. You guys can get a better, I'm sure I can pull up a better picture of what I'm talking about. Oh, I forgot the R, but that's important. Let's see here. It's not a good front picture of it. Oh, this one might work. This one here. The internet's good enough. But yeah, so it really kind of set up the basic building blocks for me to understand. As you can see here, yeah. So you've got your 3 oscillators, you've got your filter, your envelope generator in this section, then your mixer section, you've got your lag processors, you've got 2 speakers built in, and you've got a sample and hold, and then you've got your noise generator here at the bottom. And as far as getting into synthesis and sound design in the beginning for me, this was basically what I learned on. This was like a really great tool. And I think I've even seen this synth at many universities, like Berkeley College of Music uses the 2600s in their synthesis program. It was just an excellent environment for exploring and learning and understanding how sound reacts with each other. So what was so great about this design is you notice these black faders. If you pulled all these faders down, you wouldn't hear anything. So you could actually bring up the levels of each oscillator, just kind of bring up fader 1, fader 2, fader 3, and you're like, oh, I could hear 2 oscillators into each other. Then you could bring up the cross modulation between the oscillators by just simply bringing a fader up. So it's like really easy to understand, modulation, filtering, envelope shaping, amplitude modulation, frequency modulation, a lot of these things that within other systems would be difficult to learn, but this made it very easy to understand and was very hands-on. So it really quickly could figure out different combinations of what would work and what wouldn't work. And this was, basically where it I kind of fell in love with synthesis, and I was like, you know what? Whatever I do from here on out, this is always going to play a serious part in either my productions or within my sound design work. And I knew that if Ben Burt was using this sort of technology on the Star Wars movies, that there had to be something worth checking out in it, So moving on here, I'll go back into. So that's basically where that is. So from there, I started to get into. I started to look into other systems. You can see here, this is Surge Modular I had. Also this is probably not gonna. Why is it not scaling down here? This way. I got into some other systems at the time. This is the EMS, AKS Synthy, and the EML 101, the Electrocomp. And during this time, I started to call universities in the mid-90s because no one wanted this stuff. There was a point when people were just giving this stuff away. They were like I said, I found my ARP 2600 at a pawn shop. Now this stuff sells, I think I bought my EMS. I think I traded it for 2 pieces of gear I bought for like $150. So, I mean, I literally got this synth that sells now for like $15,000 for $150 back then when no one wanted this stuff. And I just wanted it because I wanted to explore sound in a much deeper complexity. But that's not the case now. You very rarely find that you can get these in a pawn shop anymore, or go to a university and buy these. It was just sort of at the right place at the right time, I guess, sort of situation. This is a system that a friend of mine, Tim Adams, he had built. This is a custom system that he custom built for me that was based off the Moog modular series, which is also 3 oscillators. It's got a mixer section, dual filter, envelope generator, capable of doing a lot of really cool sounds. It's a dual 8-step sequencers that can be linked together as a 16-step sequencer. Then you can see on the top, this is an old picture actually, but my old Korg MS-20, which was another great synthesizer for learning the basics of sound shaping, modulation, and timbre generating. And let me move down here. Jump to today. This is some of the more recent stuff that I've been using, which is called Eurorack modular. The format is called Eurorack. It was originated by a fellow named Dieter Dofer, making the Dofer systems. This is primarily, you see a lot of his modules here. These cases are actually designed by him. So what it is a format that you can buy, and when you start buying out a system, you just buy a case, and it's empty. And then you basically buy different modules, and you custom make your own system, basically to tailor the needs you want, whether you want a sound mangling machine, you want a sound processing, you want a sequencer, you want it's whatever you want. That's what's so cool about it. You basically buy an empty case, and then you just design the system that it adapts to your workflow. And I think that's what has made this so hugely popular. But I will say it gets pretty addicting. This is my current system now. It's kind of like taken over my floor out into my studio. It's like, it's gotten pretty ridiculous. I will say they do coin the name Eurorack because it is like crack. You can't get enough of it. It's so infectiously fun to get into. You were about to ask?
Did you really like 1980s sci-fi films?
I love them, man. Yeah. Pretty much. Oh, I make my studio exactly that. Yeah, exactly. Like I go in there and it's pretty much like Blade Runner times, yeah. I mean, you got to be inspired to work in your space. You know what I mean? Like I'm all about like being excited and amped to work in your environment because, like, I mean, you should. You know, it shouldn't be like a dreary, drab room. You're like, oh man, I got to work on shit today. You should be like, I mean, I'm stoked every day to work in my room, or I'm like, all right. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty out of hand. It's gotten pretty out of hand. But yeah, but this stuff is super fun. And what I like about it, here's a smaller system. This is some of the more portable live. I do a lot of live performances using these as well. This is the live rig. And what's great about it is that, as I was saying before, is you basically start out with a blank slate every time. So you will never, ever get the same thing, ever. So I've never been able to replicate a patch. Even when I've like stored all my patch notes, I repatch it back all up, and it's still not like, it's just so many variations within the voltages and between the modules and the technology. And to me, that's what's so awesome about it. Like, it's the exact opposite of working in the computer, where you can open up a session. It's going to be exactly the same thing you did before, you know. And with a computer, I feel like you kind of fall into the same patterns. I'm guilty of it. You know, when I'm doing editing or working on projects, there's a lot of things where I've set up templates and things where I can speed up the efficiency of how I'm doing things. But with this, it's really cool because it's like an experiment every time. And you're going to get something different, and you're going to just record whatever you get that time because you're never, ever going to go back to that. So that's what's really, to me, I found that fascinating and very exciting as opposed to working in the computer. Because I've designed some environments, and I'll show you guys some patches and stuff I've made where I've tried to replicate some things like this to generate some more of organic things. And what I wanted to do right now is play you guys a piece I composed on this format modular system, the Eurorack modular system. So it gives you guys an idea of some of the sounds and gesturing and some of the timbres and stuff that you can achieve with it. Let me go into this real quick. And let's see, it's probably one of these. No. Okay, so here we go. So I don't know if you see this picture. This is the system I actually created this piece of music on. Is by a company called Make Noise. They're from Asheville, North Carolina. It's run by a friend of mine named Tony Rolando. And I've worked with Tony since long before he started making Eurorack modulars. He used to work at Moog Keyboard Company as a, I believe he was working on the Voyager line. They make these keyboards, these 3-voice keyboards, and he was one of their the techs working there at the time when I first met him. And then he later got into building these systems, and I've worked with him on every iteration of module that he's released. And now he builds these systems, which are a complete system called the shared system, which is an entire case pre-configured that you can buy, which pretty much has everything you need. Sequencers, it's got a phonogene as sort of a sampler recording module. There's 2 different types of oscillators, actually 4 different types of oscillators you can do. There's the Mysteron, which does waveguide synthesis, which is kind of like harp-plus-strung synthesis, and then you have one that's a classic 2-voice analog oscillator with timbre shaping capabilities. Very, very cool, called the DPO. Then he's got the STO, which is smaller oscillator. He's got a lot of stuff within this little system that you could create create really cool sounds with. And I use this system not only to make music, but I also use it a lot to make sound effects. Because what I do is I do a ton of field recording, but I also take a lot of synthetic sounds that I create with these synthesizers, and I multi-layer them up with it's like sort of a hybrid of synthetic and acoustic sounds and some other processing to create these otherworldly things. And this will be I'll just play it. This is just sort of an example, and this is completely all done with this modular system. So let's see here, give you guys an idea. Let me see what the audio is. Can we get the volume up? Sounds pretty quiet. Where are our speakers here?
In the ceiling.
Oh, is that it? Oh, is it just that one? Wow. Sorry, guys. Man. Yeah, you should be hearing this with like with like subwoofers and everything. You're really not going to hear that. Yeah. Listen to it on good speakers when you get home. I mean, it's hard. You can kind of hear some of the articulations and stuff, but it's very, like I was talking about before, very organic, and it's very non. I was about to, could we get a little more volume, speaker volume?
Oh yeah, you might be back.
Oh, it's part of the soundtrack. It's just going to match with it'll be an extra layer for the piece. Can you guys even hear that, or somewhat? Yeah, so this piece, even though it's hard to hear, kind of goes back to what I was talking about in the beginning with some of those records that I was referencing about being super free form. It's not sort of based to any grid or like timeline. It's just very like gestural and done with, more of like a hand perform, doing things with your hands. It's a real bummer we can't hear it that great. But something to check out if you guys have time. Hello. Oh, that's a bummer, man. So yeah, that was a bad example that you guys couldn't really hear anything, but got some nice feedback here.
The sound design of the slide here.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, guys.
Are we still listening to?
Yeah, exactly. No, it's part of the track, man. Oh, what happened? We killed the mic? Okay. We can try it again. So I've been around I'm about 40 years old now. So I'm an old dude. So when I was making electronic music and stuff, I used samplers. So samplers were a big part of the music making process for me. And when I got a sampler, it introduced the idea of recording sounds for the first time, external sounds in the outside world. Prior to that, I was just using synthesizers and sounds that were only available to me within these independent systems. So getting the sampler really, really opened my mind up. I was like, whoa, anything. I can use anything now. I can go out and grab any sound in the environment. And I remember listening to this record. I think there was a reference earlier on one of my other slides, John Cage Variations record, where he was using sounds from the street corner, all these different things in different rooms and different objects to create music. And I thought that was such a compelling idea. Even Stockhausen was doing that on the Contact record, which was also on the slide. This whole idea of using found sounds in the environment into a musical piece or anything, really. And at the time, for me, that was a really radical idea. I was 17 years old when I got my first sampler, and I was like, holy cow, how am I going to go out and capture these sounds? And at the time, that was 90, I think my first recorder I got was, it was a mini disc recorder. So before what I was recording on now, back then, the most portable, easy way was to use mini discs. I'm sure maybe some of you guys don't even know. Watson remembers this, yeah. Yep. And my girlfriend even, or my wife, she's my wife now, she even had her mini disc recorder too. We would go out and record stuff, and I have hundreds of mini discs, because these little mini discs will record about 74 minutes of audio. It was compressed. This is actually one I still have, this one here, the MD 60, the Sony. And so it was really easy to carry around. You could put it in your pocket, and you didn't like scare people because you were like recording stuff, and the little built-in stereo mics were actually pretty decent. But I recorded all kinds of stuff with this. And this was kind of, I didn't realize at the time that I was actually field recording, capturing sounds and using them musically. That was kind of like the earliest sense of, taking a sound into a sampler and then manipulating the pitch, applying filters, envelopes, and doing all these things that I had learned with the analog synthesizer. Now I was applying those techniques to actually sample source material and learning all these tricks with sample loops and doing all kinds of neat things. So it's like taking one step and then changing the basic foundation sound and applying different techniques that I learned. So it was really interesting point of experimentation and learning. And since then, I went through many iterations from going from mini discs. I transitioned to what was called DAT, D-A-T, digital audio tapes, which I'm sure some of you guys remember. I still have my old DAT machines, and I had a portable Sony DAT recorder that I used to go out and record with. It was a little more temperamental than working with it wasn't as robust. I don't know if I have a picture of it here. I don't think so, but yeah, I don't see one in the slide. But yeah, so I used to carry that around, but the magnetically tape would get damaged a lot, and it didn't really work well. I was recording in Puerto Rico, frogs in a rainforest with my DAT recorder, and it didn't handle humidity very well either. It was not designed for that sort of stuff. But I was trying to do things, not knowing that later on, becoming a sound designer, I was doing all this stuff, not realizing these were all things that I was going to be doing a lot more later on in life at a bigger level. But I was just trying to get new sounds, and this was the only means that I was able to do that. So it was a big turning point for me. At the same time, computer synthesis also was taking off. Remember, I was talking about in 1999, working with Native Instruments and some of these other companies. I started to get really heavy into where things were at with computer synthesis environments. And some of these first things I got into were like Csound, which is it's free. You can basically download it. And there's lots of different patches and tutorials about it and how to use it. And there's lots of cool opcodes. which are basically little modules that you can load in and do advanced sound processing and all kinds of stuff. You can compose entire pieces of music with Csound. And what's great is you don't need anything. You just need headphones and a computer to do stuff. And so I really got into that. I got into Super Collider, and I'm going to show you some of these other systems like Max MSP, Kima, Composer's Desktop Project. And what I was always drawn to this is a screenshot of one of my old Csound files, is these environments that allowed you to basically start out with a blank slate. Just like I was working with the modular. You decide what you want to do. You create the environment and how the audio is going to react. Either it's going to get processed or you're going to do sound generation, then manipulate from that point on. I love these environments. These are some older screenshots. I should update these PowerPoint slides. But this is Super Collider. This is some of my old Max patches that I was running on my old OS 9.2 machine. But you notice it's very similar to working with modular. You work with modules. You have different things that could be event dividers. They can be multipliers. They can take the signal and do different things to it. And you're basically doing this, basically a lot of the same things that I was doing with the physical modular, but now in the virtual realm with virtual patch cables. Let me move down to, if I can do this with my left hand here, or right hand. Some more patches. Early patches when it was Max 2.5. These were some instruments, processing instruments I was designing and working in. And then Bidgel. I remember Chad was talking about, I love Plogue Bidgel's another environment where you're able to do, you could do some really cool stuff with it as far as real-time sound processing. And creating some really cool environments to kind of get just really interactive stuff happening with sound. But once again, the format is very modular, which is something that you can get into some really cool things. You're not once again defined by a fixed system. You can basically design the system the way you want it to be to work on the particular project that you're working on. So A-Box, which is not around anymore, but was really awesome. We can skip that. And let me see, there's so many different ones. I probably have 100 different slides in here of different. Here's the Kima system, Kima software I know Chad was talking about that I've been using Kima since, probably 13 years now, 14 years. I was on the early Capybara system when it was a 66 megahertz version, sold that, went up to the Capybara 320 system where I had the expansion cards. I had that for a couple years. Sold that. Now I'm on the Pancarena system, which is their latest iteration of that. But for those of you that attended Chad's talk just prior to this, it's an extremely flexible, awesome system. It's not cheap, but it's excellent because there's a sound computation engine that runs and does all the processing outside of your computer. So it doesn't tax your system at all. And you could do some extremely sophisticated things as far as sound processing goes, in the time domain, FFT, sound morphings, FFT processing, all kinds of really strange, especially real-time stuff. Some of the real-time capability processing stuff in Kima is really great for doing creature voices, demonic demons, and alien sort of. Actually, Ben Burt. I'll go back to Ben Burt. Ben Burt uses Kima. He used the Kima to the sounds of Wally, and do you remember he was using the Wacom tablet to draw the gestural voice. He was actually using a Kima patch to do Eva's voice and Wally's voice. It was all done on the Kima system. So it's excellent for voice, character design, all kinds of stuff. Really, it's really an incredible environment. You just kind of think about what you want to do. You could do some really sophisticated things with it, and there's people that create entire pieces of music with it. You can just write using the score editing window. You just create an entire piece of music as well. So it's very powerful. If you guys are really serious about getting into some pretty unique sounding things, one example, you could take like 1,000 sine waves and control them with your voice using the live input prototype. So you could do really cool things like shift the harmonics of just the even or odd harmonics of the sine waves while you're talking and controlling the amplitude and frequency of them. It gets pretty fucking weird pretty quick. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Yeah, I should have brought some examples, but I mean, it's definitely, if you guys really want to get deep in it, it's something definitely worth looking into. If you want to put the time in and you really want to get the sounds. Composer's Desktop Project is another one. I kind of call this kind of like a secret weapon. They used to sell it, but now they offer it for free. So I highly recommend you guys go check it out. It's basically started out as a C-Sound extension set that was written at the University of Bath in England by several students that worked with these two. I think it's Richard Dobson and Trevor Wishart. Trevor Wishart actually also worked on this. He's a composer at the University of Bath who I'm a huge fan of. I had many acid trips listening to his music and was always like, what in the hell is this guy using? And then I did research, and it was actually a system that he designed with another faculty member at that university, and that's what this is. It became extremely sophisticated sound set. There's about 200 executable sound prototypes in it. There's really complex, like, spectral time smearing. You've got like modify presage functions to texture motifs. You can do very, very complicated, beautiful things with this system if you get your head wrapped around it. I mean, there's and the sound quality of it is, you just got to check it out. It's free, it's awesome, and you'll be like, when you guys play with it, you'll be like, yeah, Rich was right. This is pretty awesome. It's pretty awesome. But moving on, there's just so many fun things to play with. But these are some of the things that I started to pretty much dive into pretty hardcore. What's going on here with my... oh, there we go. Symbolic Composer, I'll kind of skip through some of these. Here's another one. Metasynth is great, too. I think they might be running a sale on this right now. I think it's maybe $199. This is another excellent sound processing tool that I like to use. That actually uses images. You can import images to converts an image file to a sound file using additive synthesis. So you can use anything. You could and then you can also, there's draw tools too. So you could gesturally draw different, it could be musical, non-musical, it could be noise-based, it could be particle-based, it could be whatever you want. Just different brush tools, different things you can do to create very, very articulate, detailed sort of sounds. It's really, really awesome. If you guys if you're looking for stuff that's a little different, it's an application I always like to throw out there for people that are looking for something a little different. Here's another screenshot of it, another window. This is the effects window. You can actually do cool sort of slow automation built into the sound. So if you want to draw different amplitude curves or parameter automation curves that change with the actual sample, you can draw them all inside the editor, which is kind of neat, rather than these are things you would typically normally do within a DAW environment where you're doing the automation. Here you could do multiple different layers of that, modulation within modulation, and then automation within that modulation to get some really cool multi-layer things happening really, really quickly. But super cool. Here's another one, Soft Step. Not around anymore. I wish it still was. Synthedit, there's a lot of cool stuff. PhiMod was another one. I like a lot of physical modeling apps that model different metal resonating or strings. I use a lot of this type of synthesis within my work. And then moving back to Native Instruments, Reactor was a big, big player for me. Like Max, Cycling 74's Maximus B, you could pretty much do anything you want if you put your mind to it. And actually, I was going to play you guys, although our audio was not so happening. Here's an instrument that I designed. It's probably not, it's so big it's not going to fit on the screen, but you can kind of see here. It's an instrument called Grain Cube, and I made this available for free on my website. So you can just go download it and play with it. If you have Reactor 5 or 6, it works in either environment. And my idea was how could I give away, I want to give away a group, like a sample library, but do it in a really cool way. So what I did is I think the samples that come with it are free. They're, I think, around 300 or 250 samples in each one of these grain cloud players that you see. So they're basically a sampler granulator, and there's 4 of them. And what you can do is basically each one has a preloaded sample map, and you can load in your own samples. You don't necessarily, the samples I put in here were just ones so people could hear the capabilities of what it's able to do. But you could take anything. It's really fun for generating gestures and things sort of on the fly, doing really kind of complicated granular cutting, shifting of the pitches of grains, and processing 4 different sample pairs at one time. You could just use one. You can turn them all off, or use 3, or do them in stereo, or do quad, whatever you want. I wanted to give users the maximum amount of flexibility, just kind of go in and play with stuff, and just have something where you're like, oh, cool, I'm going to just run the record button and just record this whole passage. Just dump a bunch of samples in and let it do the work, and then go back later and just pull the little cool bits out that I think are fun. So let me do this here. And then, yeah, for each one of these, you can see the waveform of each sample if you wanted to give you an idea of what's in. It's a lot of, these are just various different field recordings and all kinds of, I'll just go ahead and play it. Let me turn this on. You're probably, like I said, the speaker situation. So what it's doing is each sample bank is choosing a random sample in the sample list, and then for whatever sample gets loaded, it'll always change the start position. Will never be the same. It'll always start somewhere different in the sample, and a different pitch, a different length of the chunk will play. So you never get the same thing twice, even with whatever samples you load into it. And then down here, you'll see a master mission control section that controls the automation rate. So I can control globally the rate of the randomization of every single parameter within the environment if I want. Or I can completely turn it off and stop everything. So there's selective randomization, and then there's global randomization, and you can define the intensity of that. So it gets, we can't really hear, but it gets some very detailed, cool sounds, drones, textures, ambient bed stuff. Depending on what kind of sounds you put into it, it'll mangle the sound in completely different ways depending on whatever you put into it. So extremely fun, but it just shows how powerful Reactor can be. Reactor's has come a long way. I've been with them since the beginning, since its first iteration as Generator, and now where we're at with Reactor 6 is really, really incredible. And it's something to look at if you guys are doing sound design. I highly recommend checking it out. There's a lot of advanced sound processing tools, sample manipulation. You can build whatever you want, synthesizers, whatever you need to do. You can completely do it within this environment. Go back to this. We're not going to save. Let's see here. We're at 4:33. I should probably move on. I'm sorry. There's just so much stuff. My PowerPoint slides got like crazy. Just too much to talk about. Sorry, guys. But yeah, I'll fast forward. So, I do a lot of the software stuff. More recently, I've been doing sample libraries, working with different companies, and then I was talking earlier about doing Ambisonic's audio. I should probably talk a little bit about some of the stuff I do with recording. There's some recording sessions we did a prepared piano for one of the Sony libraries. This was like a John Cage thing. We were hammering nails to each string and using like vibrators and all kinds of stuff, and it was a pretty crazy session. But we do all kinds of strange, anything to get a sound. I mean, here's me and my friend. We were actually circuit bending my 808 drum machine. We took it apart and we're just like probably doing things we're not supposed to be doing in there to get the ultimate crazy cracked out drum machine 808 sample kit that we could get. But I'm always doing these sort of things to get really sort of different sounds. But more recently, I brought a couple of the microphones that I've been using, jumping from the old mini disc recorders up to where we're at now. It's quite a big difference. But I brought a couple here because I do a lot of field recording as well for my job. So it's a lot of synthesizer based stuff. It's stuff done in the computer, stuff done in the box. But then there's a lot of stuff where I actually have to go out and record things. And I brought a couple of my new favorites. This one's the Sennheiser 8040. This is the ST. They call them ST when they're grouped together in this. And this is one of my favorite new This one's in the XY configuration to do stereo recordings. Really light, portable. I pretty much keep this one in my backpack all the time with my Sound Devices recorder to capture just general sound effects and stuff. And this one's been kind of interesting. It's been a newer microphone, and what I've been really like about the Sennheisers, and this one's called the Sanken CO 100K, is they're extended range microphones. They extend far above the typical range of what people would normally hear. Like most people hear about 20 to 20. Most the frequency responsiveness microphones is about 20 to 20. That's pretty standard. These go up to about 50. And this one goes up to 100. So there's all this upper information that you're hearing at the top that, when I record at 2496, I pitch shift that stuff down in like Sound Miner or in RX, and I listen, and you'll see all this, you'll hear all this stuff that you weren't able to hear at the normal pitch, but then stuff starts coming out at the lower pitches. It's kind of creepy. There's a bunch of recordings I've recorded with this guy where I pitched it down and I'm like, what the hell is that? That's really weird how that works out. But it's cool. I've really been kind of fascinated by, I collect all kinds of microphones, and I love, each one of them has such a unique characteristic. They're almost like plugins or different instruments in a way. And most recently for my Ambisonic recordings, I've been using the Soundfield SD450, which is ships with this decoder box here. The project I'm working on right now with Google, where I'm doing full Ambisonic recordings in all these different locations around the country, I've been using this setup. And so I've been doing a lot of work with them doing VR audio matching scenes, which has been kind of difficult. VR audio has been an interesting experience for me this year, because it's almost everything that I thought would work has not worked. Yeah, I mean, it's been really difficult trying to create audio for something that's not really real. But when you're in a VR environment, your ears and your brain is triangulating all this information around you. So if something's off, even by a little bit, it's really off. So it really, really, really has to be exact. And the things I'm talking about are like distancings of sounds. Like if there's a tree, it's approximately 30 feet away, and you hear a bird in that tree, the bird really has to be in that location. And another thing, there's weird things about trying to use recorded sounds and trying to bring them into VR sometimes don't work at all either, because they also have inherent surround of environment of that particular location that it's captured. Because when you use this mic, it's capturing everything up, everything down, and everything around you. So that is awesome and terrible at the same time. Extremely awesome and terrible at the same time. So you need, yeah.
So are you using that with the Transeau plugin too as well, or just the control box?
This will do the decoding for you, but I use Aphex B, which is an awesome. You could look it up. You can download the demo. They let you run a demo for 30 days. It does format B, does HRTF, does surround, does all the different sort of formats. And I know Audio Ease is just about to release the 360 Tools plugin. I don't know if you guys seen that. They make Altiverb and some of these really great. I use a lot of their stuff. Speakerphone, which I use all the time. I know a lot of my friends that work in the video game industry use a speakerphone a lot for putting voices and dialogue and tanks and different, armored vehicles or different things like that. But they just came out with it's called the 360 Tools plugin, which is going to address a lot of these issues that I'm running into right now as far as working with VR 360 audio. Because right now there's not a whole lot of tools available to people to mix ambisonic audio. I'm using Ambiex. There's these free plugins that you can download them on Google. I'm sure you guys maybe have seen some of them. I've been using them with Google, with Reaper. We've been doing a lot of these Reaper sessions using these plugins, but they're not super high quality. They're kind of, they do weird things to the audio. It's not the best stuff right now, but things are getting better. Things are getting better, and that's why I'm so excited about this, because the bigger companies are starting to pay attention. You know, when Audio Ease was like, "Oh, we're going to do our stuff," I was like, "All right, finally, we're getting somewhere." But it's an exciting area. I think it's an exciting area. It definitely presents a new set of problems, but I think we're kind of working through that now. But you can definitely, it becomes a much more immersive experience if all the elements are done right and recorded right and placed right, and it can be really cool. I was supposed to talk to 4:30, but it looks like I went over. I'm sorry, but if you guys had any questions, I mean, it could be about anything. It didn't have to be about this stuff. I just, yeah.
When you deliver sounds for chord, roll, and modular,
Mhm.
what do they want? The whole keyboard, or just straight pitches?
It's interesting. Yeah, like I just,
Wave files, or?
well, no, it's different with every company. I just worked with Behringer on the DeepMind 12 synthesizer that just got released, or I don't think it's out yet, but with that, we used an iPad application that connects via USB, and you just dump your patches from that into the iPad app, and then I send that to them. And then, like, with Arturia, I just worked with them on the Matrix Brute synthesizer. For that, it was a USB connection that just takes a system file. You can just email it right to them out of the synth so they could get the sounds right away. It's like, but every company's different. Every company has like a different delivery method of how you export patches or sounds out of a particular synth and stuff. But they're making it easier. A lot of it's by USB connection these days.
So your modular,
Oh, the modular, no, you can't. The modular is basically,
analog out, right?
it's just analog outs. Yeah, there's no way to do any kind of patch recalling or saving. There's no way to save anything. So it's pretty much you basically, you capture it, what it's doing right then and there, and then that's it. But that's the beauty of it. I love that. I love that. I can't hang on to anything. I can't go back to, I'll save that session for later and work on it. But I end up never working back on it again. It's one of those things where I feel like I've been much more productive making sounds and doing things on that system since I've gotten it, because it forces you to do things because of the way that it's just, the way that it is, the way that it's set up. So it's pretty fun stuff. Anybody else?
What kind of mic was that again? The one that recorded with 100
Oh, this one? The Sanken CO100K. You can come look at it too if you want. Yep. Definitely worth checking out. Yeah. Yeah.
What would be a good intro into Eurorack and modulars and stuff?
I would look at maybe the shared system, that system I was talking about, the Make Noise, because it's a complete system that has everything built into it. A lot of my friends bought that as their first intro into the modular, and they love it. Like all my friends, like they straight got in and were like addicted. It was like the needle was in the vein. They're like, all right, dude, man, you weren't lying, man. Yeah, they like that. It just sucked them in, like it has that effect. I'll warn you guys. They don't call it Eurorack for nothing. Yeah.
Have you tried out the new Ambio?
The Sennheiser, I'm waiting for it, actually. I'm on the list of, like, I signed up for the list of, like, the first developers. And then, actually, my friend that I'm working all the Ambisonic stuff with at Google, he has one. And I'm trying to borrow it right now. Because I'm excited about that now Sennheiser's in the game. That's going to change everything. It's going to bring all this stuff that's kind of boutique and expensive for people into a more affordable level. And hopefully it's going to kickstart a lot of these other bigger companies in making the tools more of a universal format to work in and make it easier to mix and deal with these things in projects. So
Have you started experimenting with the Unity, not the Unity, but the things like the Oculus SDK, the audio SDK with the new
yep, I'm using Unity 3D with Google right now. Like we're doing exports to Android and Nexus, and because you can export any format within it. So like everything I'm using, all the sound emitters and stuff, all of it is being pretty much done in Unity at this point. But cool stuff. I didn't know it before, but now I definitely am pretty well versed in it. Is that it? Is that it? Cool. Well, man, thank you. Sorry about the audio. I wish it was a little more. We had like a little PA rig in here, but it didn't work out. It's cool. I mean, but I thank you guys for coming and hearing me talk about geeky audio stuff. And, thank you for having me. Thank you.